Marcus Stone swaggers through the Buckingham Palace courtyard, scanning the crowd like a predator hunting easy prey. The cocky street bully spots what he thinks is the perfect target, a motionless guard in a red uniform who can't fight back even if he wanted to. Stone circles his prey, taunting and testing boundaries with the confidence of a man who has never faced real consequences. But what happened in the next 3 seconds left the entire crowd in stunned silence. Marcus would never make that mistake again, assuming he could even remember it through the pain of spitting out his own teeth. What drives a man to believe he can humiliate centuries of tradition in broad daylight? If you want to see more wild moments like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more. And hey, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. Marcus Stone stands 6'3" with tattoos covering both arms and scars, marking his knuckles like a violent scorecard. The smell of stale alcohol clings to his leather jacket, while brass knuckles bulge visibly in his pocket. For 28 years, he has ruled the narrow streets of East London through intimidation and carefully chosen battles against weaker prey. The Buckingham Palace courtyard represents foreign territory, where his usual tactics feel suddenly meaningless. Families point excitedly at golden gates, while elderly couples pose for treasured photos. Young tourists read guidebooks about royal traditions they barely understand. The atmosphere buzzes with respectful anticipation rather than the nervous tension Marcus creates wherever he goes. His calculating eyes scan the crowd like a predator examining new hunting grounds. Local police know his name, but serious charges never stick. Pub owners tolerate his presence because his reputation keeps other troublemakers away. Even neighbors offer respectful nods that mask their fear behind politeness. Among the tourists, 2 elderly men stand with straighter backs and sharper eyes than average sightseers. These veterans recognize something in the guard's motionless stance that Marcus completely misses. Their weathered faces carry knowledge earned through real battles where discipline meant survival and carelessness meant death. The guard's red uniform displays brass buttons and medals that catch the morning light. His stillness appears absolute, controlled, purposeful, but Marcus sees only elaborate costume rather than the tools of a trained soldier. The ceremonial sword looks like theater props to someone who measures strength through pub fights and street intimidation. School children, guided by nervous teachers, instinctively move away from Marcus's swagger. Tourists grow uneasy as his heavy boots echo across pristine stone. The veterans exchange knowing glances, recognizing military bearing that extends far beyond ceremonial duty. They understand what Marcus cannot see. This guard carries himself with the quiet authority of someone who has faced real combat. The guard's service record includes tours in Helmand Province, where battlefield experience taught lessons that ceremonial duty cannot. His medals represent more than decoration. They mark survival through situations where split-second decisions meant life or death. His perfect posture reflects discipline forged under Afghan sun and tested by Taliban bullets. Marcus interprets this military precision as weakness rather than controlled power. The guard's inability to respond to casual provocation appears to Marcus as helplessness rather than professional restraint. His fatal mistake lies in confusing ceremonial protocol with actual vulnerability. The morning sun reflects off palace walls that have witnessed centuries of British history. Golden gates frame a world governed by traditions Marcus neither understands nor respects. His swagger carries the confidence of a man who has never faced real consequences for aggressive behavior. The stage sets perfectly for education delivered through devastating precision. Some lessons can only be learned through painful experience, and some teachers communicate through methods that leave lasting impressions. The crowd begins sensing something shifting in the air as Marcus moves closer to his chosen target. Marcus pushes through the final cluster of tourists, separating him from his target. His heavy boots echo against ancient stones as families instinctively step back from his advancing bulk. The cheerful morning atmosphere drains away like water from a cracked basin while children clutch their parents' hands without understanding why. His first insult cuts through the respectful quiet. "Look at this toy soldier playing dress-up." Marcus circles the motionless guard like a predator testing prey. "Fancy prison got you trapped there, soldier boy." His crude laugh bounces off palace walls while tour groups fall silent mid-sentence. The guard remains perfectly still, but morning light reveals details that tell a different story than Marcus reads. Brass buttons polished to mirror brightness reflect years of disciplined service. Campaign medals arranged in precise rows speak of deployments where ceremonial training became survival skills. The sword at his side carries the weight of functional military equipment rather than costume decoration. Marcus sees only theatrical elements confirming his assumption about easy prey. He steps closer, invading the guard's personal space with practiced intimidation. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" Spit flies from his mouth as he leans forward. "Real men handle real business on actual streets." Three elderly veterans wearing military pins exchange meaningful glances. They recognize something in the guard's bearing that speaks of combat experience rather than mere ceremony. That particular stillness belongs to soldiers who learn to calculate responses while incoming threats built pressure around them. Marcus grows bolder with each unanswered insult. He spits deliberately at the guard's polished boots, watching the saliva splatter across pristine leather. "There's what I think of your fancy uniform." His voice carries the mocking tone perfected through countless pub victories where size guaranteed success. The tourist chatter dies completely. Cameras stop clicking as people realize they witness something far more serious than typical attraction entertainment. Parents feel dangerous energy building and respond with protective instincts, moving children away from the confrontation zone without conscious decision. Marcus continues circling, each step bringing him closer to the guard's position. "You gonna stand there all day like a statue? Or are you gonna do something about it?" His taunts grow louder as confidence builds from the guard's apparent helplessness. But something shifts almost imperceptibly in the guard's stance. The veterans notice it immediately. A subtle adjustment that speaks of readiness rather than rigidity. The guard's eyes remain fixed forward, but his breathing stays controlled while amateur aggression builds just 3 feet away. Marcus pulls back his right fist in an exaggerated windup that telegraphs his intention to everyone watching. His scarred knuckles catch sunlight as he prepares to deliver what he believes will be the finishing blow to this elaborate charade. The crowd holds its collective breath as 28 years of street-fighting confidence coils into one devastating haymaker aimed directly at the guard's jaw. Behind that perfectly still exterior, however, a completely different kind of mind had been working all along. The guard's tactical mind processed every detail with combat-trained precision. Distance between threat and defensive position, angle of approach, weight distribution revealing which direction the attack would come from. 2 tours through Helmand Province had taught him these calculations in places where getting them wrong meant coming home in a flag-draped box. Marcus saw ceremonial stillness and interpreted it as weakness. The guard was running threat assessments perfected while patrolling sniper-filled Afghan streets. His peripheral vision tracked every movement as Marcus circled closer, noting the amateur footwork and telegraphed aggression that marked someone who had never faced truly dangerous opposition. The crude insults washing over him meant nothing compared to Taliban fighters who had tried to kill him with rocket-propelled grenades. Military training had taught him the crucial difference between ceremonial duty and survival instinct. Standing guard at Buckingham Palace required endurance and discipline, but the underlying skills remained identical to those that kept him alive during nighttime raids in hostile territory. He knew exactly when protocol demanded restraint and when circumstances justified decisive action. Marcus was pushing toward that invisible line with every crude comment and threatening gesture. The guard's breathing remained perfectly controlled even as Marcus's voice grew louder and more aggressive. His heart rate stayed steady at the same level he had maintained while carrying wounded comrades through enemy fire. Real combat had taught him that strength doesn't announce itself through posturing or threats. Genuine power moves with quiet confidence and strikes only when striking becomes absolutely necessary. Years of military service had shown him the difference between playground bullies and actual enemies. Taliban fighters had tried to kill him with sophisticated weapons and coordinated tactics. Drug dealers in Kabul had threatened him with knives while high on substances that made them unpredictable and dangerous. Compared to those genuine threats, Marcus represented nothing more than a loud amateur whose intimidation tactics might work on civilians but would prove useless against professional training. The crowd's growing nervousness fed Marcus's confidence, but the guard recognized it as the familiar calm that settles before real violence erupts. He had felt this same atmosphere in fire-base command posts moments before incoming mortar attacks. The tourist chatter dying away reminded him of village streets going quiet just before enemy fighters opened fire from concealed positions. Military discipline held him perfectly in check, but his tactical mind had already selected the precise technique that would end this confrontation if Marcus crossed the final line. An orbital strike targeting the mandibular nerve cluster, a clinical blow to the jaw that would shut down an attacker's nervous system instantly without causing permanent damage. The same controlled force he had used to subdue armed insurgents who posed genuine threats to his unit's survival. Marcus continued circling and posturing like a confused predator who had stumbled into the wrong territory. The guard stood ready to deliver a lesson that would shatter every assumption Marcus had built about strength and weakness. Some students only learn when the lesson comes with immediate and undeniable consequences. The moment of truth approached as Marcus's swagger reached its peak. Marcus's haymaker carried 28 years of successful bullying, but missed every fundamental element that separates effective violence from clumsy aggression. His massive frame coiled like an amateur boxer who had learned technique from watching movies rather than training with professionals. The punch began its journey through morning air with all the precision of a sledgehammer swinging at a nail, broadcasting itself so clearly that the guard had already calculated his response before Marcus's fist reached the halfway point. Time stretched as the crowd registered what was happening. Cameras stopped clicking while children pressed closer to their parents. The elderly veterans watching from the gathering's edges recognized this moment with grim familiarity. They had seen overconfident recruits learn harsh lessons about underestimating their instructors during military training exercises. The guard's counterattack flowed around Marcus's clumsy haymaker like water finding its path around a boulder. His response came from muscle memory drilled through countless hours of close-quarters combat training where hesitation meant death. An orbital strike delivered with surgical accuracy targeted the specific nerve cluster that would shut down Marcus's system without causing permanent damage. The guard's brass buttons never shifted from perfect alignment as his fist connected with Marcus's jaw at precisely the correct angle to scramble his nervous system. Years of military training compressed into a single moment of devastating efficiency. The technique carried the same controlled force he had used to neutralize armed insurgents in Afghan villages, where civilian safety required precision over brute strength. Impact traveled through Marcus's skull like thunder rolling across empty sky. His brain struggled to process what had happened while his nervous system simply shut down. The confident sneer vanished as his legs forgot how to support his massive frame. 28 years of successful intimidation ended in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Marcus hit the ancient courtyard stones with a sound that made tourists wince and veterans nod with professional appreciation. Blood splattered across pavement that had witnessed similar lessons for centuries. 3 teeth scattered like white dice, each one marking the price of mistaking discipline for weakness. The crowd gasped as they watched the street bully's world collapse in real time. The guard returned to textbook posture, as if nothing more significant than routine inspection had occurred. His uniform remained immaculate except for a slight reddening across his knuckles and a small bloodstain on his white glove. His breathing stayed perfectly controlled while his eyes resumed forward focus. Police arrived within minutes, their professional assessment of the scene swift and neutral. They directed Marcus toward medical attention while collecting his scattered teeth as evidence. The veterans immediately offered to serve as witnesses, validating the guard's measured response after clear provocation. Their statements would emphasize his restraint and the textbook nature of his defensive action. The guard's voice carried quiet authority as he addressed the situation with clinical precision. He had seen worse in Helmand Province, he noted calmly. Marcus's punch was textbook amateur hour, and St. Mary's Hospital would handle the dental repairs appropriately. His professional resumption of post demonstrated the lesson without gloating. The morning air hung heavy with the weight of education delivered through devastating precision. Marcus lay motionless on blood-stained stones, facing a reality more shattering than any physical blow. The copper taste of blood mixed with fragments of broken teeth as Marcus struggled to comprehend what had just happened to him. His hands trembled against cold stone, while his jaw throbbed with pain that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his shattered confidence. The crowd stared down at him with expressions that looked uncomfortably like pity rather than the fear he was accustomed to commanding. The guard's voice cut through the morning air with quiet authority earned through genuine combat experience. His words carried no anger or satisfaction, just the measured tone of a professional delivering necessary instruction to someone who desperately needed education. While you were practicing your pub brawls on drunk university students, I was in Helmand Province watching rocket-propelled grenades tear through armored vehicles. Real enemies don't telegraph their attacks like you just did. The elderly veterans scattered throughout the crowd nodded with grim recognition. These men understood the quiet authority in those words because they had heard it before from sergeants and officers who had faced genuine life-or-death situations. They recognized the voice of someone who had survived encounters where hesitation meant death, and discipline was the only barrier between soldiers and body bags. Marcus felt something dying inside his chest as understanding crashed over him like ice water. His entire identity had been built on intimidating people who couldn't fight back, on being the biggest presence in rooms full of smaller, weaker targets. But here, on these ancient stones, bleeding and humiliated, he was discovering that real strength had nothing to do with size or swagger or crude threats. Every tooth you just spit out is teaching you something about what real strength looks like, the guard continued, his voice never rising above conversational level. It doesn't announce itself with threats. It doesn't pick fights with people who can't fight back. And it sure as hell doesn't mistake ceremony for weakness. The words cut deeper than any physical blow because they exposed the hollow foundation his entire adult life had been built upon. The transformation happening inside Marcus wasn't healing, but something far more painful. Understanding was being born through agony as he realized that genuine power moves with quiet confidence rather than loud posturing. True warriors choose their battles based on necessity rather than opportunity to humiliate weaker opponents. His ego was dying on these blood-stained stones, replaced by the first glimpse of what actual strength might look like. The guard returned to perfect military posture while Marcus struggled to process lessons that rewrote everything he thought he knew about power and weakness. The physical wounds would heal, but the humiliation and hard truth would linger far longer. His painful resurrection offered the possibility of becoming something better than a street bully, though whether he would embrace that possibility remained unclear. The morning air hung heavy with the weight of education delivered through devastating precision, while paramedics approached to assess the damage that discipline had inflicted upon bravado. 2 police officers helped Marcus to his feet, while paramedics examined his swollen jaw and collected his scattered teeth from the blood-stained courtyard stones. The guard had already returned to his perfect military posture, his uniform immaculate despite what had just transpired. Only a small, dark stain on the ancient pavement marked where Marcus had learned the hardest lesson of his adult life. The morning sun continued shining on Buckingham Palace, as if nothing more significant than a routine changing of the guard had occurred. The crowd began dispersing slowly, but their conversations carried a different weight than typical tourist chatter. These witnesses had seen something that would stay with them long after their vacation photos faded and their guidebooks gathered dust on forgotten shelves. They had watched a masterclass in the consequences of disrespecting earned authority, and the lesson would echo in their minds whenever they encountered genuine strength disguised as quiet professionalism. Children tugged on their parents' sleeves, asking difficult questions about what had happened to the bad man and why the soldier had hurt him. Mothers and fathers struggled to explain concepts of respect and consequences in terms young minds could understand. The veteran tourists shared knowing looks and quiet words about lessons learned the hard way by men who had never understood the difference between ceremony and combat readiness. Marcus disappeared into an ambulance while tourists resumed taking pictures of the palace gates. But the morning's demonstration lingered in the courtyard like an invisible monument. His blood on stones that had witnessed centuries of British history became a temporary reminder that actions have consequences, especially when those actions target someone with the training and authority to respond with surgical precision. The guard's measured response had offered everyone present an education in proportional force applied by true professionals. His technique had been exact enough to stop the threat without causing permanent damage, controlled enough to demonstrate restraint even while delivering devastating consequences. Real warriors don't celebrate victories over amateur opponents. They simply return to their duties with the same disciplined excellence that defines their entire approach to service. Word of the encounter spread through the gathered crowd like ripples across still water. Tourists called friends and family to describe what they had witnessed. Veterans nodded with professional appreciation for a job well done. Tour guides added the incident to their mental collection of stories about why royal guards command genuine respect rather than casual mockery. The guard's final gift to both Marcus and everyone who watched was proof that true strength serves something greater than personal satisfaction. His response had protected the dignity of his position while demonstrating that discipline and restraint can coexist with decisive action when circumstances demand it. Marcus learned that real power doesn't announce itself with threats or swagger, and the watching crowd discovered that some institutions earn their reverence through more than just tradition and ceremony. The elixir of hard truth continued spreading beyond the palace courtyard as witnesses shared their story with others. Social media posts and dinner table conversations carried the lesson to people who had never set foot on royal grounds. Marcus Stone had become an unwitting teacher, his humiliation serving as education for anyone who might mistake ceremony for weakness or confuse discipline with inability to act when action becomes necessary. The ancient stones would soon return to their familiar rhythm of tourists and ceremonies, but the lesson would echo far beyond those palace walls. Marcus Stone's violent education became something far more valuable than a simple street fight gone wrong. His 3 scattered teeth purchased a lesson that no amount of swagger or intimidation could have taught him. Real strength operates through discipline rather than dominance, through measured response rather than mindless aggression. The guard's surgical precision demonstrated what genuine authority looks like when forced to act. His restraint until the final moment, followed by devastating efficiency, revealed the difference between ceremonial duty and combat readiness. True warriors serve something greater than personal satisfaction, responding only when circumstances demand action rather than seeking opportunities to display power. What would you do if someone mistook your professionalism for weakness? When faced with aggression that demands response, are you prepared to act with the same controlled precision that separates professionals from amateurs? Marcus learned these answers the hard way, through pain that will remind him forever about the cost of underestimating earned authority.